Hi, my name is Eric and I am an Optimizely MVP. Today I'd like to start up a new series showing some techniques and recommendations I have when developing products from Optimizely like CMS and Commerce. So this is a virtual Windows 11 environment. I do have some things pre-installed like the .NET SDK, and I do also have Docker installed. I would In this video, I'll only be using Docker to host the SQL Server. I think it is a great way to host SQL Server. If you don't like the file-based databases, it's great when restoring and attaching existing databases. To get started, you don't need it, but I would really recommend you to set up Docker, and at least on my computer, Docker will run inside a virtual Hyper-V environment. So that is something you may want to check out. But if this is your typical development box, you would probably have Docker installed on your metal, on your laptop or computer or whatever you use. I do also have Visual Studio installed 2022, and that should be sufficient to get you started. You don't need Visual Studio as an IDE anymore if when doing Commerce or CMS from Optimizely. Really any IDE or whatever Notepad will do, since you can compile your code inside the console. You start by installing the Episerver templates. These are still called Episerver. I checked with Optimizely, they will rename stuff as time goes. So this, if you watch this in the future, this might be Optimizely templates. There. Now you can check which templates you have installed by running .NET new dist epi, or even of course Optimizely or Opti. Okay, so that's the templates. Now we're gonna need to install the CLI. The tool installed is called .NET Episerver. Alright, so now when that's being installed, we can set up a, let's start by setting it up an Alloy site. We did check the previously the installed templates, and we do have the Alloy MVC template shipped with the templates. I would typically use a root folder called repositories. And we're going to make an Alloy. Jesus, can't type today. Like so. Now we're going to install the Alloy template from using the templates we recently downloaded. And we're going to set a name of this also, Alloy. You namespace it correctly. Like so. Actually, that installed, that pulled the source code from the templates that we installed and installed here. Actually, this is ready to run. If we should list the app data folder, we do have an Alloy database there. Check the app settings. So now we're going to see that it is connected to the database, and we should actually be fine to go from here. So I'm going to demonstrate that by doing .NET run. First time it will maybe take a few seconds to do this. Reason for this taking a bit of time is that when doing .NET run, the installer or the compiler goes out of the internet, download any NuGet packages that are missing, because we didn't have those prior to this. So that's what's happening. The next time we're going to run .NET run, things are going to be a bit more quick. I'm actually going to do one thing before loading this site here. Since this is a brand new environment, we're going to have to found this as an administrator, and trust development certificates. This is not related to Optimizely CMS. This is a general .NET function or requirement. Certs. So what this will do is it will insert a certificate in our store and we'll be able to run the site. Now, since this is set up, there we can create our account like admin. Save that. And here you go, Alloy. All its glory. Also have a look at the CMS. That is actually everything we need to getting started developing CMS in .NET, the new .NET CMS 12. I'm gonna, since we shouldn't be using Alloy, and it's great as for inspiration to get up and running. So I'm gonna show how to get started using this in a more proper way, like with an empty CMS and with an empty database. So I'll be creating a folder called sample CMS, and to install an empty CMS site, we did have this .NET. The one we want to use is this one. It's an empty CMS site. Like so. It's there. There are not that many files. This still does ship a database. Now we do not want to use that. Instead, we want to use the CLI. We installed the .NET empty server CLI. It consists of several four main commands, and I suppose they are quite self-explanatory. The create CMS database, the commerce database, the add admin user, and the update database. In this scenario, we want to use the create CMS database, but we cannot do this since we do not have a SQL server. So let's go forth and set up a SQL server using the console or using Docker. Now there are many different SQL servers, and typically many people would have installed SQL Server on their development box and have everything sort of destroyed over time because it's a beast to install, and there is no reason to install it like that anymore. Instead, we rely on Docker. In this scenario, we use Docker Desktop. There are many ways to install SQL Server and many versions of SQL Server for Docker. If you want to check out what's available, you're going to go to the container registry from Microsoft. Jesus, can't spell today. Too little coffee, like so. So here are some images from Microsoft, and if we would try to search for SQL here, we're gonna have a good bunch of SQL servers. The version I would suggest we would use for development is you can use MS SQL Server. This is a full-blown SQL Server. You can use it in like standard, enterprise, and express editions. We don't really need those. We do have, there are so many different versions of SQL Server. We just want something small and not that resource consuming for development. So there's a SQL Server Edge, which is a sort of a new version of SQL Server. What it does is they scale everything off except for the SQL engine. So it's just the SQL engine running, and it's very resource effective. It also runs on ARM architecture. So if you have Raspberry Pi or something like that, you can run SQL Server Edge on Raspberry Pi. It doesn't really matter which version you're going to use here. Of course, you can use developer. I think we're going to use developer now because it's because of licensing, I suppose. and Optimizely products run great on SQL Server Edge. The way we're gonna install this is by using Docker Compose. This can be done by using Docker command line, but having Docker Compose is an awesome option because we can re-instance this container as many times as we like in a very simple matter. First off, I'm going to set up a path for this, and we're going to create a folder in the root Docker. Create a folder called SQL Server or MS SQL perhaps. We need 3 folders inside of this. Logs and this should be log, I think. So there we have our folders. Now the compose file is a YAML file, so we might just set this up to be a YAML. Set it to YAML, which is typically you annotate it like Docker. We start by using version. So the image here would be the, I can't spell today, copy paste it here, and I believe we said we should use the developer edition of Azure SQL Edge. So this is a full path to the image actually, which Docker will pull that from the internet. This is what we internally will call this container. So I'm only going to use one instance. I may as well call it MS SQL. If you have multiple instances of SQL Server, which you might very well have in an environment like this, you should enumerate them or name them or something funny. User root. This is also this container will run in Linux. So we're actually going to install Linux in a virtualized Windows 11 environment, which is kind of cool. Otherwise, this means that it will be always up unless we force it to shut down. But if something happens, if it crashes or whatever, it's always going to reboot. So the environment specific, this is environment variable, so to speak. We're going to have accept EULA. Yes, this will help us during installation. And we'll set up a password. So this is where we set up the SA password. So system administrative password. We're going to use this is a development. Use anything you like. And we did create these folders here. They are actually visible in the disk here. We do have Docker. There is, for instance, the data folder. So this is how we should map our folders in the Docker container. The Docker container is sort of a virtualized environment, but it doesn't have any state. If we shut down the container or remove it, all files and folders inside it will disappear. So anything that we want to persist and store for a long time, we're going to need to store in our outer environment, which is our Windows 11 environment here. So, and I set up 3 folders, which is the data and the logs and the secrets file folder. We're going to use / here in order to, I think you can use anything, but there's less requirement for escaping. We're using / data, and that should be mapped to, this is the part that is on our computer, and this, whatever we write behind this colon, is inside the Docker container. So this would mean that we connect the data directory of the Docker container to our local folder. Now we're going to do this for 3 more, but I'm going to copy paste a bit here. Hopefully I will right from the start. And we're gonna need to have some port mapping. This is we should expose the port 1433, which is the standard port for Docker, and that should be it. Now, I would typically, when setting up a Docker Compose like this, store this compose file inside the folder of the where I actually stored the data. So I can import this as you can name this anything actually, but that would help us a bit. In order to set this up, we can first check what's running in Docker. There's nothing running in Docker. Let's do Docker Compose to check this same thing. There's nothing running in Compose. If anything would have been running in Compose, we would have seen it in Docker anyway. To set this up, we should do Docker Compose and we're gonna have the Compose YAML file. We're gonna bring it up and detach. So up means that we will pull down the container and put anything up that we have set up in our script, and it will be up and running, so to speak. And detach means that we will not use this console, it will start detached. So if we want to check or monitor or do anything with inside the container, we need to attach to it. This is in like 99% of the cases what I use for any container that I bring up. Let's see if it works. We have a typo. Oh yeah, so like so. Ports. Sorry. Save and redo that. So it's gonna pull the SQL Server, and this is the installation of the SQL Server. And there we are probably done here. Let's see if it is up and running. Yep, it's up and running. So we did install and get SQL Server up and running in about 34 seconds inside a virtual environment. That is awesome. In order to demonstrate that this is up and running, I have also installed SQL Server Management Studio. This is nothing you actually need, but it may be practical if you're going to restore detached databases and want to run a SQL Server commands or SQL commands towards your SQL Server. Now we can run PS. If we run Docker PS, we can see a bit more information about this container. So here we see what we're running. We see the container ID, which may be useful. It's created up. It is running mapping 000, which is localhost, for 1433 to 1433. So we can write the dot there or localhost or wherever you want to, and we did SA and that's that for it one, and there you go. So we are now connected towards this SQL Server. Right, enough fun about that. We did install a sample CMS here, right? So like I said, when installing the sample site or the even the empty site, it does ship a database now. So it does have a connection string here. I would advise anyone to open up that and clear that and remove the database because we don't want that. We're gonna remove that, and we're gonna open up the development JSON file here, app settings, like so. Now, in order to install a database and set it up and connect it to our empty CMS site, you should run .NET server, and there is this command create CMS database. and you can see a bunch of options here. So what we are wanting to do is create the CMS database. We're gonna set the we're gonna connect the project, so that when stating the project, what the CLI, the Episerver CLI, sorry, the Optimizely CLI will help us do is actually configure the CMS to connect to the database. It can help us write some information in the app settings file. For doing that, we're going to set the CSPROI file, which should be sample CMS CSPROI, and we're going to set the server, which is -s local host 1433, and we're going to set the user like SA and the password, which was, and we're going to name the database DN is database name, and we're going to name this to say sample CMS base. Just gonna take a few seconds. So if we check in SQL Server Management Studio, there's going to be a create database here. This should though be empty. Should be no tables in, because that is something that Optimizely CMS would set it up itself. And so we're going to need to start up the CMS in order for it to create the tables, whatever functions and store procedures it need. If we would check the app settings here, it should have injected the connection string to the database. So if we start up, now this is going to be the same thing as with the Alloy sample, that it's going to pull the NuGet packages from the internet. Next time we're going to run this, it's going to be a lot more fast. So we already have downloaded the packages. Oh look, it set up. So it did set up the password and a user for the database. It doesn't use the system administrator. That's cool. All that. So now we can use this in order to register our administrator. I would say let's not do that. So in order to use the CLI to add an admin user, we're gonna rely on .NET Episerver. So there's the add admin user, and it has a few options here as well. We are required to set up most of them, and I believe there's a few restrictions for passwords, so we cannot write password one with a small p. We're going to need to, last time I tried to need to use a big P or a capital letter somewhere for it to bite. We need to add an email. We're also going to need to set the connection string name, which is EpiserverDB. Like so, and we're going to need to set up the sample CMS deploy to link to that. And I hope there it injected the user in our database, and it did boot up a bit faster, or compile a bit faster this time. So if we're going to go to localhost 5000 here, we should have to need to go to the Episerver-CMS to be order to log into the CMS. Now I did log into Alloy previously to this, and I did use the same username and password. I'm just going to click enter here, but it was admin and password at 1. And there's nothing here, which as it should be. If we check the admin, there's no content types, and there should be no sites or whatever. If we check the database, we're going to see all the Episerver tables, or the Optimizely tables, lying around here. So that has been created by the installation by default. So this is now an empty but functional database, Optimizely CMS. And that will wrap it up for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Like and subscribe if you liked it and want to come back for more content. See you on the next one.